Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video.
Thanks for watching. Follow a brighter destiny for more powerful stories, and don't forget to subscribe.
You don't own anything here. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. The woman behind the reception desk said it the way most people order coffee, without thinking, without weight, as if the words cost her nothing at all. Daniel Cross stood in the middle of the lobby of the Ashford Grand Hotel, with his daughter asleep against his shoulder, her small body burning through the fabric of his jacket, and he did not move. Rain had soaked through his hoodie somewhere around Liberty Street. His boots had left 2 dark prints on marble, so polished it looked like poured glass, and every guest near the fireplace had turned to watch a stranger get put in his place. It was 11:52 p.m. Daniel adjusted Grace against his chest and said nothing for a moment, because he had learned a long time ago that silence sometimes carries more than words ever could. The clerk in front of him, a young man named Curtis Bell, kept his eyes on the computer screen without really looking at it. The way people do when they've already decided what they're going to say. Grace stirred, her cheek pressed to her father's collarbone, and whispered something that sounded like cold. The manager, a sharp-featured woman named Regina Voss, walked over in a tailored navy blazer with a tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. "Is there a problem, Curtis?" she asked, not looking at Daniel yet. "This man says he has a reservation," Curtis said. "Under Cross. I'm not finding it." Regina finally turned. She looked at Daniel's hoodie, at the tear along the strap of his backpack, at the mud drying on his boots, and something in her face settled into a kind of quiet satisfaction, the look of a person who believes she already understands everything she needs to know about you. "Sir," she said, "the Ashford Grand is a 5-star property. I'm sure you understand that we can't simply accommodate walk-ins who don't have proper documentation." "I'm not a walk-in," Daniel said. His voice was low, even tired, in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "I booked this 3 weeks ago. My daughter has a fever of 102.4. The doctor at the airport told me she needs a warm room and rest tonight, not tomorrow." A woman near the lounge chairs laughed softly into her wine glass. Somewhere behind Daniel, a man in a cashmere coat muttered something about people who wander in off the street, and the words landed exactly where they were meant to land. Daniel felt the heat rise in his chest and pushed it back down, the way he always did, because rage never solved anything, and Grace needed him steady more than she needed him right. "I reserved the room under the name Cross," he said again. "Please check." Regina sighed the way people sigh when they've decided the conversation is already over. She typed for 11 seconds, watched the screen, and something flickered across her face, there and gone, so fast that only someone who had spent a lifetime reading people would have caught it. It was the look of recognition, and then it was gone, replaced by a practiced, empty pleasantness. "I'm sorry," she said. "There's nothing under that name. We're fully booked." What Regina did not say, what she would never say out loud in that lobby, was that the reservation was sitting right there on her screen, flagged in red letters that read, "Ochre Lifetime Access Presidential Suite." What she also did not say was that she had rented that exact suite 11 nights ago to a travel influencer named Blake Sterling for $6,000 in cash, off the books, and that if anyone discovered the reservation belonged to the man standing in front of her in a soaked hoodie, her entire arrangement would collapse in front of 100 witnesses. So she closed the window instead. "There's a motel about 4 miles west of here," Curtis offered, not unkindly exactly, just carelessly, the way you'd give directions to someone you'd already stopped seeing as a person. "They might have vacancy for your situation." "My situation," Daniel repeated quietly. Grace lifted her head off his shoulder. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed red, her lips slightly parted with the fast, shallow breathing of a child running a real fever. "Daddy," she said, "I'm cold." That sentence did something to the room that Regina's rudeness hadn't managed to do. A few guests looked away, suddenly very interested in their phones. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. Can she at least sit by the fire while I make a call, he asked. She's 7 years old. The lounge is reserved for registered guests, Regina said. She's sick. We have standards to maintain, sir. Those 5 words would follow Regina Voss for the rest of her career, though she didn't know that yet. Standing there in her navy blazer with her chin tilted at an angle designed to look like authority and looked, to everyone watching, like something closer to cruelty wearing a name tag. Grace's small fingers curled tighter into the collar of Daniel's hoodie. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the river, low and distant, the kind of sound that makes a warm room feel like a luxury rather than a right. A dust mote drifted through the beam of the chandelier above the desk, catching gold light for one long, suspended second before disappearing into shadow, and for that second nobody in the lobby moved at all. In the far corner near a cart of folded towels, a housekeeper named Dolores Reyes had stopped working entirely. She had been employed at the Ashford Grand for 19 years, long enough to remember when the hotel had a different feeling to it, back when the owner's late wife used to walk the floors at midnight, checking on turd guests herself. Dolores' eyes moved from Daniel's face down to the little girl's where a thin silver bracelet caught the light from the chandelier. Engraved across it in small looping letters was a single name, Claire. Dolores' hand went to her mouth. She knew that name. She had heard Claire Cross say it herself years ago, standing in this very lobby. Luxury means nothing if kindness disappears. Dolores moved quickly toward the desk, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the marble. Miss Voss, she said, maybe we should find them a place to sit. The little girl's not well. Regina turned on her with the speed of someone who had been waiting all night for a reason to be angry at someone smaller than her. Rosa, she never bothered to learn Dolores' actual name in 19 years. Go back to the 3rd floor before I make tonight your last shift here. Daniel watched the housekeeper's shoulders drop, watched fear move through a grown woman's body over something as small as offering a chair to a sick child, and he understood in that moment that the coldness in this lobby did not begin with Regina Voss. It had been allowed to grow here, unchecked, for a long time. Before Daniel could speak again, the revolving door spun and a burst of noise entered with it. 3 people walked in trailing suitcases, with designer logos and a young man in front of them with a ring light mounted to a gimbal, already filming. Blake Sterling had 3 million subscribers and an ego to match every one of them. Mr. Sterling. Regina's entire posture changed in less than 2 seconds, her spine straightening, her voice climbing half an octave into something warm and bright. Welcome back. Your suite is ready exactly as you left it. Your suite, Daniel said quietly. Regina froze. Blake grinned, oblivious, gesturing toward the elevator bank with the easy confidence of a man who had never once been told no in a hotel lobby. Yeah, man, the owner's suite, best view in Savannah. Regina always hooks me up. The lobby went still in a different way now, a way that had nothing to do with pity and everything to do with attention. Daniel looked at Regina. You told me you were fully booked. That suite is reserved for premium guests, Regina said, and even as the words left her mouth, she seemed to hear how thin they sounded. And what am I? Daniel asked. Curtis, still standing behind the desk, muttered under his breath, not quite quiet enough. A problem. Grace began to cry softly into her father's shoulder, the exhausted crying of a sick child who has run out of patience for adults behaving badly around her. Daniel closed his eyes for exactly 3 seconds. When he opened them again, something in his posture had changed. Not louder, not angrier, just final, the way a door sounds when it's closed for the last time. He reached into the front pocket of his backpack and pulled out a worn black card, edges softened with age, a small gold crest pressed into its center. He set it on the marble counter without a word. Dolores, watching from across the lobby, whispered, "The founder's card." Regina's face lost its color in a way that no amount of foundation could hide. That's not that card doesn't work anymore. It's probably a fake. Swipe it, Daniel said. Sir, I really don't think. Swipe it. Curtis's hands trembled as he picked up the card. The reader beeped once. The screen flashed white, then filled with green text that every person near the desk could read. Access grant, Ogre identity verup. Cross-majority Ogre Asford Hospitality Group. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was the kind of silence where you could hear the fireplace crackling 40 feet away, where the elevator's soft chime sounded like a gunshot, where Blake Sterling's camera operator slowly lowered the gimbal without being asked to. Curtis stepped back from the counter as though the desk itself had turned electric. Regina opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She tried again. Still nothing. Grace lifted her head, her small feverish face turned toward the woman who had refused her a chair by the fire, and said in a voice thin as paper, "Daddy," she lied. 3 words. That was all it took to strip away every excuse Regina Voss might have tried to construct in the next 30 seconds, because a 6-7-year-old had just said, in front of a live-streaming influencer and 40 stunned guests, exactly what everyone already suspected. Daniel kissed his daughter's forehead. "Dolores," he said, using her real name, and the housekeeper's eyes filled instantly. "Would you take Grace somewhere warm and call the house doctor?" "Tell him it's urgent." "Yes, Mr. Cross," Dolores said, already moving, already wrapping an extra blanket from her cart around Grace's shoulders with the practiced gentleness of someone who had wanted to do exactly this an hour ago and hadn't been allowed to. Regina finally found her voice. "Mr. Cross, I had no idea. There must have been some kind of system error. You saw the reservation," Daniel said. "I watched your face when you found it." Her mouth opened and closed twice, like a woman drowning in air. Daniel walked around the counter. Regina instinctively stepped in front of the terminal. "Mr. Cross, this really isn't necessary. I can explain everything if you'll just..." "Move," Daniel said. It was one word. It carried 5 years of grief inside it, 5 years of watching a company he'd built with his late wife run itself into something he no longer recognized, 5 years of staying invisible because grief had made the spotlight unbearable. Regina moved. Daniel opened the administrative log. It took him under 90 seconds to find what he was looking for, and once he found it, he understood that this night was only the surface of something much deeper. The presidential suite had been rented off book 14 times in the last 4 months. Guest complaints, 41 of them, had been deleted from the system within 24 hours of being filed. A folder labeled "No Vacancy VIP Discretion" contained records of families turned away on nights when the hotel was, according to the actual occupancy data, less than 60% full. And then, near the bottom of the log, a document dated for the following morning at 9 ICUA. M. Termination Dolores reason, insubordination offers by R. Voss. Daniel read it twice before he looked up. Across the lobby, Dolores sat beside Grace, on a lounge chair near the fireplace, humming something low and gentle while the girl's breathing slowed. 19 years of loyalty, and Regina had scheduled her firing before sunrise for the crime of offering a sick child a warm seat. You were going to fire the only person in this building who remembered what it stands for, Daniel said. She disobeyed a direct order, Regina said, and there it was, exactly as predicted, the refusal to bend even now, standing in the wreckage of her own choices. I have policies to enforce. Someone has to maintain standards. No, Daniel said. She obeyed something more important than a policy. She obeyed her conscience. That's the one thing this hotel has been missing since I stopped watching it closely enough. Blake Sterling's camera was still rolling, and Regina noticed it now for the first time in minutes, her eyes darting toward the small red light, like it was a loaded weapon aimed at her career. "Turn that off," she said. "Not a chance," Blake said, grinning at the lens like a man who had just stumbled into the best content of his year. "This is going up tonight." Daniel pulled his phone from his backpack, still standing behind the desk with the admin log glowing on the screen in front of him. He dialed a number he hadn't used in over a year. It rang twice. "Walter, it's Daniel," he said. "I need you to come down to the Savannah lobby right now, tonight, not tomorrow." There was a pause on the other end, brief, startled. The kind of silence that told Daniel the man on the other line had recognized his voice instantly despite the year of distance between them. Funny. Daniel, where are you? Is Grace all right? Grace has a fever of 102. Funny. 4 and I just found out your manager here has been running the presidential suite as a private cash business for 4 months. Daniel said, his voice flat and steady, even as his knuckles went white around the phone. Funny. I'm looking at the termination file she wrote for the housekeeper who tried to help my daughter tonight. Funny. Effective 9 a.m. tomorrow. Another pause, longer this time. I'm 11 minutes away, Walter said. Funny. Don't let her touch that terminal again. Daniel hung up and looked at Regina, whose face had gone the color of the marble beneath her feet. Funny. The chairman is on his way, he said. You have 11 minutes to think about whether you'd rather explain this to him or to legal first. Funny. Regina said nothing. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't make things worse, and some part of her seemed to understand that for the first time all night. Funny. A tall man in a charcoal suit rose slowly from an armchair near the far window, where he had been sitting quietly for the better part of an hour, close enough to hear everything and distant enough to remain unnoticed. Funny. Regina's whole body seemed to shrink at the sight of him. Mr. Price, she said. Funny. Walter Price, chairman of the Ashford Hospitality Board, walked toward the desk with the slow, deliberate steps of a man carrying more guilt than his posture let on. Funny. Daniel, he said, your father asked me to watch over this place while you grieved. Funny. I should have looked closer months ago. You knew there were complaints, Daniel said. Funny. It wasn't a question. I knew there were numbers on a spreadsheet, Walter admitted, his voice quiet enough that only those closest could hear it. Funny. I didn't understand there was cruelty behind them until tonight. Funny. Daniel let his eyes move across the lobby, over the gold light fixtures, the fresh flowers on every side table, the marble that guests like to photograph for their vacation posts, and then toward the hallway where his daughter's fever was finally being tended to by the one person in the building who had never stopped caring. Funny. My wife didn't build this place so people could feel small, he said. She built it so tired people could feel safe for one night. Funny. That was the entire idea. His voice caught just slightly on the word safe. Funny. The night she died, Daniel continued, and the lobby had gone so quiet now that even the ice in someone's abandoned drink seemed to hold still. She was driving back here at 11 at night because a guest called in tears. Funny. A mother and 2 kids stranded after their car broke down in a storm 2 counties over. Funny. Claire didn't send someone. She went herself because she used to say, no one gets turned away when they need help. Funny. She never made it back. Dolores, still holding Grace's hand across the room, pressed her palm to her mouth. Funny. Several guests near the fireplace lowered their eyes to the floor. Even Curtis, who 30 minutes earlier had suggested a sick child try a motel 4 miles away, looked like he might be sick himself. Funny. Daniel turned back to Regina. You denied my daughter a chair by a fire that was burning for no one. Funny. You mocked my clothes before you even looked at my reservation. You lied to my face about a suite you were renting out under the table. Funny. And tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you were going to fire the only employee in this building who tried to help us. Funny. Mr. Cross, please, Regina said, and for the first time that night her voice actually shook. Funny. I have worked 11 years for this position. I built my entire career here. Funny. Daniel's expression didn't move, and tonight you worked very hard to lose it. He looked at Walter. Funny. Terminate Regina Voss effective immediately. Freeze her system access now, not in the morning. Send every off-book payment record to legal by Monday. Funny. Walter nodded once, already reaching for his phone. Regina's face collapsed the way a building collapses. All at once, no warning holding it up anymore. Funny. This isn't fair, she said, her voice cracking. I was protecting the brand. I was maintaining standards. That's my job. That's what you pay a manager to. Funny. Standards, Daniel repeated, and something almost sad crossed his face, because he had heard that word so many times tonight that it had started to sound less like a value and more like a weapon. Funny. You use that word to justify turning away a sick child. That's not a standard. Funny. That's an excuse dressed up in a blazer. He turned to Curtis next, who had gone pale enough to match the marble under his feet. Funny. You laughed when my daughter asked if this was her mother's hotel. I was just following her lead, Curtis said quietly, gesturing weakly toward Regina. Funny. Then next time, Daniel said, choose better people to follow. He looked at Walter one more time. Let him go as well. Severance according to policy, nothing less, nothing more. He's 23. People change, but not my watch, not tonight. Security arrived 4 minutes later, called quietly by one of Walter's assistants, and the walk that Regina Voss took across the lobby she had ruled for 11 years was the longest walk of her professional life. Past guests who had watched the entire unraveling, past Blake Sterling's camera, which never once stopped recording, past Dolores, who did not look up from Grace's side, because some victories don't need to be witnessed to be felt. By the time the paramedics arrived to check on Grace's fever, it was 114A. Her temperature had dropped half a degree already, helped along by cool cloths. Dolores had prepared without being asked, the kind of small competent kindness that never shows up on a performance review but somehow holds an entire building together. The paramedic recommended fluids, rest, and a follow-up in the morning. Nothing more serious than a bad flu meeting an exhausted body at the worst possible hour. Daniel sat beside his daughter on the lounge chair, holding her hand, and for the first time in 5 years, he let himself cry quietly enough that only Dolores noticed. She would be proud of you, Dolores said softly, sitting down beside him. Claire, I mean. She always said this place should feel like somebody's home, not somebody's trophy. I stayed away too long, Daniel admitted. I let people I never met decide what this hotel would become. I thought if I stopped looking it would hurt less. Grief does strange math like that, Dolores said. It convinces you that distance is the same thing as healing. It usually isn't. Word moves fast through a lobby full of people with nothing left to do but watch, and by the time security walked Regina toward the door, 3 strangers had stepped forward on their own, unprompted, the way people do once they finally see someone in power, actually listening. A retired schoolteacher named Margaret Ilsley, still in her robe from an upstairs room, said she'd been told the hotel restaurant was closed at 8:40 p.m. On her 40th wedding anniversary, only to watch 4 other tables seated behind the glass, while she waited 40 minutes for a rideshare in the rain. I never said anything, she told Daniel quietly. I just assumed that's how places like this treat people once they stop being young and interesting. A young Army veteran named Marcus Doyle, still in the lobby after checking in an hour earlier, said he'd been denied his military discount in March and mocked within earshot by its clerk for trying to get something for nothing. I've been overseas twice, he said, jaw tight. I didn't expect a parade, I just didn't expect to be laughed at. A single mother named Priya Anand, traveling with her son for a hospital appointment 2 towns over, said she'd been placed in a room with a broken heater back in February, and told when she complained that the hotel didn't owe extra comfort to guests paying a discounted rate. My son was 6, she said. He slept in his coat. Daniel listened to each of them without interrupting, the way his wife used to listen, the way he was only now remembering how to do. 3 stories, 3 different nights. The same coldness underneath every one of them, worn like a uniform nobody had ever questioned. He thanked each guest personally, took down their room numbers, and told Walter to comp every night of their stays going back as far as the records allowed. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was simply the smallest correction available at that hour, and Daniel had learned the hard way that small corrections done consistently were the only kind that actually lasted. Within 2 weeks, the Ashford Hospitality Board had approved a full compliance review across all 6 properties in the chain. Every discretionary VIP booking from the past 18 months was cross-checked against actual guest folios. 11 additional off-book arrangements were discovered at 2 other locations, and 3 more managers were quietly let go, their departures explained to staff, not with blame, but with a simple direct standard. Nobody at any Ashford property gets treated as less than human because of what they're wearing when they walk through the door. Dolores Reyes was offered the position of Director of Guest Experience for the Savannah property, a role that didn't exist before that night, but was created specifically because Daniel understood, better than any consultant could have told him, that the person who protects dignity in a building deserves the authority to keep protecting it. She accepted on the condition that she could still personally check on any guest who arrived sick, tired, or afraid, no matter what title sat next to her name. Curtis Bell, 6 months later, sent Daniel a letter, handwritten, not typed, describing the job he had taken at a smaller inn outside Charleston, where he had hauled coal on his own initiative, keeping a small folded blanket behind the desk for exactly the kind of situation he had once mishandled. Daniel never replied, but he kept the letter in a drawer in his office, because people who choose to grow rarely need an audience for it, just a little proof that someone noticed. Grace recovered fully within 4 days, her fever a memory faster than the night that surrounded it, though she would occasionally, months later, out of nowhere while eating cereal or tying her shoes, ask her father, "Daddy, why was that lady so mean to us?" And Daniel, who had spent 5 years avoiding hard questions because grief made even simple ones feel unbearable, found that he finally had an answer he was ready to give. Some people, he told her, get so scared of losing what they have that they forget other people deserve kindness too. It's not about you, sweetheart. It never was. It's about what's broken in them. 6 months after that night, the lobby of the Ashford Grand looked almost the same, marble still gleaming, chandeliers still catliching light at the same angle they always had, the fireplace still burning through cold Savannah evenings. But a small brass plaque had been added near the front desk, easy to miss unless you knew to look for it, engraved with 11 words that every new employee was asked to read on their first day. No guest is turned away here for what they're wearing. Dolores made sure of that personally. She still checks the lobby every night around 11, out of habit more than obligation now, the way people do when a job has quietly become something closer to a calling. Sometimes she thinks about a tired man in a soaked hoodie, holding his sick daughter, and about how close this hotel came to losing the one thing that made it worth building in the first place. And sometimes, late at night when the lobby empties out and the fire burns low, she swears she can still hear a woman's voice from years ago, walking these same floors, reminding everyone within earshot that luxury means nothing at all if kindness disappears. If this story reminded you that kindness costs nothing, and cruelty always finds its way back to the door it walked through, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, because stories like this one only get made when people like you keep watching until the very end. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from tonight, and let us know. Have you ever been judged by the way you looked before anyone bothered to ask your name? Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes only. All characters, names, businesses, and events depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real person, living or dead, or any actual establishment. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of human dignity, workplace ethics, and social justice through narrative storytelling. It does not make factual claims about any individual, company, or institution.